Hello, my name is Meghan Howell, and today I'll be discussing the themes and central messages of The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli for my midterm project in Intro to Humanities at Lake Sumter State College. Here are the timestamps for the topics I'll be talking about. The 15th and 16th centuries are characterized as being a turning point for human civilization. New religious ideals were emerging in the Protestant Reformation, and conflict was ever present in all European nations. Rulers certainly would have loved to have a handbook that taught them how to correctly rule their people. Thanks to Niccolo Machiavelli's The Prince, they soon did. Now, an all-knowing how-to handbook for princely rule is certainly an exaggeration, but Machiavelli did give distinct guidelines for how he believed a prince should rule his people in the famous political treaty, The Prince. Niccolo Machiavelli was an Italian politician and Florentine diplomat for 14 years. He served as the political head of the Second Chancery and the secretary for the Council of Ten in Florence, an Italian city-state. Once the Medici family returned to power in Florence in 1512, though, he was dismissed, tortured, and sent to exile on reasons of conspiracy. It is while he was in exile that he wrote The Prince, which he dedicated to Lorenzo Piediero de' Medici, the grandson of Lorenzo de' Medici, and ruler of Florence from 1513 to 1519. In this political treatise, Machiavelli counseled Medici to unite all of Italy through the expulsion of foreigners and arming of the entire nation. Compared to other philosophies of the time period, Machiavelli's was incredibly secular. Most political ideals were based on Christian morals and the ethical guidelines that all princes must follow, including those of Desiderius Erasmus in the prelude to the eventual Protestant Reformation. However, Machiavelli argued in The Prince that a prince's attitude to power should be based on human nature and reasoning instead of morality. An excerpt from The Prince states that the gap between how people behave and how they ought to behave is so great that anyone who ignores everyday reality in order to live up to an ideal will soon discover that he has been taught how to destroy himself, not how to preserve himself. Machiavelli's ideals did agree with humanist principles in the fact that both promoted rational action. By learning from classical authors, we can make the best choices for our own lives since we guide our own behaviors. A large theme in The Prince is the idea that a ruler must put aside any moral obligations and do what must be done for the greater of his people, even if that means being, in his words, uncharitable, inhumane, and irreligious. Machiavelli emphasizes the idea that a prince must be prepared to do the unthinkable to protect his people. Although he should do what is right whenever he can, a noble prince must prepare himself to also do what is wrong. Machiavelli believes a good use of cruelty will keep a prince in power, specifically cruelty that is committed in a small frame of time at the beginning of the prince's rule to ensure that he has the respect of the people. A poor use of cruelty, however, is cruelty that is few at first and crescendos into chaos. A ruler following the second, Machiavelli argues, is doomed to fail. Prolonged violence makes citizens feel unsecure and will lead to revolts against the prince in power. Due to the necessity for violence in certain situations, though, a prince will do nothing but fail if he is restricted by godly morals and ethics. Possibly the most popular theme of The Prince is whether it is better to be loved or hated. Similar to Machiavelli's point about violence, he believes that a healthy mix of both is ideal, but in the case of this combination being impossible, fear is preferred. Machiavelli's reasoning is simple. Humans are selfish. They'll do whatever they must in order to gain the best benefits for themselves. So, a prince relying on love will be betrayed at the first sign of distress. However, a prince who is feared is less likely to face this rebellion during times of need. Machiavelli explains this by saying that men are less nervous of offending someone who makes himself lovable than someone who makes himself frightening. For love attaches men by ties of obligation, which, since men are wicked, they break whenever their interests are at stake. But fear restrains men because they are afraid of punishment. Machiavelli continues by adding that a prince should ensure that he's not too feared, however, or else he risks getting overthrown by the angered and fatigued citizenry. Think of it in terms of this. Imagine you had two teachers. One teacher was incredibly nice, and you loved and respected them lots, but you didn't fear them. The other teacher, however, could be likened to a dictator, and would discipline any kids if they heard them talk even just once out of line. If you were to cheat, which class would you cheat in? The teacher who you feared, or the one that you didn't? Most likely you'd cheat in the one you didn't fear because you knew that the repercussions the teacher would give you, if any, would be much less than the consequences you'd face from the strict teacher. Now, what if the teacher that you hated and you feared was overly harsh or ridiculous and gave, for example, a test on 2 chapters that they assigned you to read just the day before? In that case, a child would be much more likely to cheat, for the rule of the teacher was so harsh that the concept of obedience was no longer a factor in the child's decisions. The policy is the same for princes, according to Machiavelli. Machiavelli also argues that a prince should always appear virtuous, or having honorable qualities such as compassion and piety, but actually acting virtuous can be detrimental to the principality. A prince should never actively seek virtuosity, just as he should never seek hostility. Instead, he should see everything as a means to an end, and detach moral value from any act he commits for the better of the people. However, appearing virtuous is vital, for this virtuosity will keep the general populace on his side and prevent rebellion. The model ruler, according to Machiavelli, was Cesare Borgia, the illegitimate child of Pope Alexander VI, who sought to unify Italy with ruthless measures. Borgia's goals were never seen to fruition, but Machiavelli still admired the merciless tactics he used. In The Prince, he believed a good ruler should model himself after a fox and a lion, writing that one must be a fox in avoiding traps and a lion in frightening wolves. The general response to Machiavelli's principles were negative, and he was seen as cold-hearted, later even being condemned for his promotion of deceitful and cruel actions. The term Machiavellian was also coined after this, which described a person who believed that one must pursue political interests and gains at any cost. Although his work wasn't appreciated by many when it was written, the ideals brought up by Machiavelli in The Prince can help to shed light on the actions of politicians in our day, as well as give us aid when we ourselves are put into positions of power. While our responsibilities will most likely never be about life or death, we can still apply Machiavelli's principles of fear and love when we wish to gain respect from others. I'm Meghan Howell, and this has been my midterm project for the Intro to Humanities course at Lake Sumter State College. Thanks for watching!